Welcome to Devlog 03. So I've decided to fast forward a bit on our Nomad budget redesign. So we are applying our design principles in revamping the design of Nomad budget. If you were watching the second part, we were just sorting out the layout, and part 3 aims to finish the whole layout. There's a lot of just putting in text and images here. So you can see on the left hand side there's some images that I found in Canva that I wanna use to depict the features that I wanna convey. So I'll talk over it as well, and so let's get to it.
Drink water, subscribe, and I'll see you soon.
So if you're new here, how I do it is I talk over a lot of the coding session or design session that I did. It's not real time, so this was a previous design session I did, and then talk over the thought process and the decision making, why we're doing it. So we've gone through a couple of pages here, and from the previous video we can see that we are taking a couple of sites as our inspiration. So Stage Timer was one of them, and then Design Joy as another. So we are following storytelling from the top down. A lot of it is building social proof before we ask the user to the call to action. So this is why, if you can see at the top part, there's like a random citizen. Here's what they say about our product. Essentially, this is where you put a lot of reviews from your actual users before you show the new users, your call to action. You build that trust as they scroll down your page. A lot of the decision making I've talked about in the previous video. So if you're unsure what the main principles are we follow, why we're doing it, make sure you watch the previous video. Yeah, that was fairly quick. I'll be showing the whole layout after this is done. So currently I'm sorting out the frequently asked question section. We're making sure that people are able to ask questions. You can see I anchored on the layout here, and then as they scroll down, you can see the features, social proof, and then another social proof section, and then frequently asked questions. Everything is all built so that as they scroll down, it builds social trust. It builds your credibility. So you don't want to have your product or your service sold on the first page, because a lot of the startups, a lot of the founders, or a lot of the new applications built, there is no trust that the public has for it. So you definitely need to invest in time in building that credibility. At this point, I'm building the call to action page. So after building all the trust, here's what I want the user to do. At this point in time, when I was building this, the fonts are all messed up. So in a couple of design sessions later on, we will be diving into font families. So there is a science to picking what font works with what. It's not just randomly picking a font family and then hoping it looks good. So as a designer, or maybe as an engineer or anyone who's building anything, you have to be conscious of the terms, like what are the serifs, what are the typographies, what are the which font families work with what, and which is usually used in what industry. So we'll be diving into that one later on as well. But for now, everything is pretty standard, and you will see later on the impact that the difference it makes when you have a proper fonts that you use in your website. So you'll see the big difference here. So for now, you can see it's pretty plain, and I will be showing it to you in the next session. So playing around with a lot of gradients now, and I think Apple was the pioneer of gradients. You can see their signature design in a lot of the iPhone, Apple, iPad products. They have a combination of pink to fuchsia or pink to purple gradients. And that set a lot of trend in the designer space, where people are using fonts gradients with their fonts now, or in just their websites. I would say this is the what in gaming, this is what they call like the meta. So this is what the meta of the web design is right now. Before, it was a lot of, at the beginning, it was like Flash and then jQuery. Like there's a lot of metas in different stages of the web application. Currently, this is the meta of web design. If you missed this part in the first two videos, this is the color wheel for helping you decide what best works with what color, so you don't have to think about complementary colors. But what I found was the neutral colors like gray, it doesn't really give you complementary colors, so it's just gray, so different shades of gray. At this point, I'm building the bottom nav and trying to figure out how well it would fit. So a pro tip here is when you're moving your frames, you gotta hit control click when you're drag and drop the whole frame. Otherwise, some of the components gets dragged along with it. So if you want to resize the frame without moving some of the components, you gotta hold control. Something I learned painfully here. You see the text here is there's a notion where they call text hierarchy. So essentially, things that you want people to anchor on has to be bigger than, say, minor details. I know it sounds a lot like common sense, but you would, if you're not conscious of things like text hierarchy, or maybe just the wording in itself, it helps you be mindful of these decisions that you make. So even just making a header bold, or having a different font size, like a bigger one, and even just having, like, if you want it more subtle, you italize it versus making it bold. So there are subtle changes in the font that help users anchor on what you want them to anchor. And if you don't use them correctly, the users would be anchoring on the wrong things. So for example, here, instantly you can see my call to action is, are you ready to get started? So it's big and much larger, and the font is much thicker than the other fonts. And so when a user looks into this site, inevitably they will get pulled into what I want them to look at versus all the other details that are already there. We are also making use of the white noise, not white noise, what was the term? White space, or the negative space, essentially making use of the color white. You don't have to always put everything, you don't always have to fill in all the white space in your application. So you have to be strategic of where you place your components and what essentially the white space complements your design choices. Yep. I think at this point the layout is pretty good. Like in the first video, in the second video I think we structured like what we structured how each component we place where, all aimed to build credibility before you call to action. And so we've been putting the skeleton, so to speak. Again, the good thing about Figma is you can easily just query or Google community UI kits, and essentially those kits allow you to just copy paste components that you would use. And if you're in a more advanced part, you would also obviously build your own, but for me it's more, or for the back engineers, it's more reusing a lot of these things. Let's see, I want to copy the button here. And then tweaking it as to help fit your overall design. As you become more accustomed to using Figma, you would have your own library. And I started noticing it. You can save like primary, secondary colors that you commonly use. But for now, as a relatively newbie in this space, I've been doing a lot of this manually. A lot of this is just drag and dropping the components at this point. But yeah. One of the great things about creating this skeleton or layout of your potential website is essentially you can just swap out the components and the color and the text, and you would have essentially a new website altogether. So actually I would be building another site based on this layout. So we've done all the work. This is essentially a asset of sorts for a potential website, right? So if I wanted to build another website, I can just copy paste the whole frame. I'll show you how I would do it, but I will copy the whole thing and then just start changing the font size, the color and everything, and then you don't have to redo the whole work. The aim is later on, when you build a lot of sites, you have all these assets, templates that you employ next time you build another site. So my whole mantra has been build once and earn multiple times. So earn in a sense that you get the dividends continuously from doing the work once. You don't need to always redo the same thing over and over. So you create an asset of the component. And a lot of my code snippets as well, I have I'll link the snippets library as well, but I build a lot of snippets and then I can reuse them from different sites. This is almost ending, so I will catch you on the next video. Thank you for watching.